This is literally one of the best One Piece theories you will ever see. We explain why Luffy's Gomu Gomu no Mi is actually the Kisho Kisho no Mi, which is the inheritance devil fruit that allows the person who eats the devil fruit to inherit the will, personality, and even powers of the previous owner, Goldie Roger and Joy Boy. But before you think, huh? Roger didn't even have rubber abilities. What are you talking about? Relax. If this theory is correct, then it can only mean that the Gomu Gomu no Mi ability was added to the Kisho Kisho no Mi inheritance fruit after Roger died 24 years ago, and thus by the world government to hide the true name and nature of this devil fruit. As revealed in the last One Piece chapters, this means that Roger did not have any rubber ability because it was not part of the fruit at that time. We know that the Gomu Gomu no Mi was stolen from a government ship 12 years ago, but the fruit itself was feared by the government for centuries, which means that the fact that the government openly transported the most important fruit in history can only be because someone who had finally used the fruit after many centuries recently died within a few years, causing the fruit to reappear, and the government therefore tried to erase the name by adding the ability Gomu Gomu no Mi to the Kisho Kisho no Mi inheritance fruit. But their plan did not work 100%, although they managed to modify the devil fruit. They could not keep it because Shanks stole it. His interest in the fruit suggests a connection to his old pirate crew, and thus to Roger, who in this theory ate the fruit before his journey began, and thus inherited Joy Boy's will, while Luffy, after eating the fake Gomu Gomu no Mi, suddenly began to be happy like Joy Boy and say the same things as Roger. How else could Joy Boy ensure that he would return one day, creating the legend of the one who will return, if not with a devil fruit that inherits his will? This is only the surface explanation of the basic idea of this theory. The conclusion is far crazier, so keep watching. Let's go deeper into this rabbit hole and explain the iceberg of Luffy's true devil fruit awakening. Joy Boy's legacy, the Kisho Kisho no Mi inheritance devil fruit. Also, only small percentage of the people who watch our videos are actually subscribed, so if you end up liking this video, consider subscribing. Please enjoy this video. Let's go! When one eats a devil fruit, one can learn its true name, as the essence of the fruit reveals its true nature to the one who eats it. And so over time, many devil fruits have been written down in books. But with the recent revelations in the One Piece manga, we have found out that the name of a certain devil fruit has been erased from history and replaced with another seemingly suitable name to hide its true nature for some reason. If we assume that the spoken fruit is actually Luffy's Gomu Gomu no Mi, then that would mean that the main essence of Luffy's devil fruit was never actually rubber. But due to the fact that Luffy thought it was rubber, he was never able to focus on its true purpose, which puts the awakening of this power under the worst possible condition, which was the goal of those who hid the true essence of this devil fruit. But for some reason Luffy's fruit is now beginning to awaken, so the names of devil fruits are based on what one is able to do after eating a devil fruit. Luffy's fruit was given the name Gomu Gomu no Mi by the government because it gives rubber powers and turns anyone who eats it into a rubber person. But both the government and history knew exactly about the true nature of this fruit, which the government tries to hide. Even if this devil fruit had always originally had the Gomu Gomu no Mi ability, this rubber attribute would have been a recognizable element of this fruit. So changing the name alone would not make much of a difference because people would simply know that this fruit, despite its rubber attribute, was something else at its core. On the contrary, the rubber attribute would even be the biggest clue that this fruit is the legendary fruit from ancient times that the government fears so much. So it would do no good at all to change the name. After all, fruits can be recognized not only by their names, but also by their abilities. So the only way to really fake the identification of a fruit and thus erase it from history by changing the name is if Luffy's fruit did not always have the Gomu Gomu no Mi ability. That is the only way you can change the name of Luffy's devil fruit fruit, without people still recognizing it by the ability, is if you first change the nature of the fruit itself. That is, make it appear to be something it's not. Only then does it make sense to change the name that refers to its new seemingly true ability. And if we assume that neither Dr. Vegapunk nor anyone else was involved in changing the nature of the fruit, the only way to do this is because of the true nature of Luffy's devil fruit itself, which allows it to permanently take on the characteristics of another ability, in this case Rubber. That neither Dr. Vegapunk nor anyone else has been able to change the ability of the devil fruit is as good as proven, because we have never seen such a thing with any other devil fruit, so it can't be due to science or any other ability. Otherwise we would have seen such phenomenon many times already, as it's a pretty powerful ability, and therefore it can only be the ability of Luffy's fruit itself, which then can only affect its own devil fruit, which makes it very valid that the true nature of Luffy's devil fruit has something to do with the fact that it can somehow change its own properties. That Luffy's devil fruit did not always have the ability of the Gomu Gomu no Mi is obvious, because remember, devil fruits are named after what the users of the devil fruit feel after consuming the devil fruit. Anyone who had eaten the same devil fruit as Luffy with the same rubber ability would come up with the same idea of calling that fruit Gomu Gomu no Mi. It is actually absolutely impossible that someone would ignore this characteristic and give the fruit a different name. But since it originally had a different name, we can definitely assume that it did not always have the Gomu Gomu no Mi ability. People are not stupid. If you want to get rid of the Mona Lisa but you can't destroy it, it's not enough to call it Marcus Lewis, for example, and expect that no one will recognize this legendary painting. So you have to change the appearance of the painting first, and then give it a name based on the changes you have made, so that no one will ever find out that it is the Mona Lisa. So what characteristics does Luffy show that might indicate the truest sense of this fruit? Luffy certainly won't suddenly awaken something completely new that hasn't been shown many times before. So it must be something that has always been part of Luffy's journey since the beginning of One Piece, but was never really considered relevant or associated with Luffy's devil fruit in any way. It has to be something that the government is afraid of, something that the government is known for hiding and erasing from history, which is obviously everything that has to do with the knowledge of the Void Century, which is at the same time their greatest fear, that someone will find out what happened 800 years ago. That's what the government is always trying to erase. So it's possible that the government's fear of Luffy's devil fruit has nothing to do with strength in general, at least not in the first place, but rather with the knowledge from the Void Century that he inherited from someone who lived at that time. It must be an ability that connects Luffy to something from the past with the help of the devil fruit, something that we have always noticed about Luffy literally since the first chapter as a mere mystery without any explanation, namely Luffy's mysterious connection to Goldie Roger and later even Joy Boy. Right after Luffy ate the devil fruit, he suddenly started saying the same things as Roger and even felt happier than ever, filled with a lot of joy, a possible reference to Joy Boy. Thus the devil fruit will connect Luffy to Roger and Roger to Joy Boy, and thus Joy Boy to Luffy. If we assume that Joy Boy possessed the straw hat hidden in Marijoa and that Roger ate the devil fruit before his journey began, then this explains why he brought the straw hat and why Shanks then gave Luffy the straw hat. Luffy clearly shows all sorts of connections to Goldie Roger. He can hear the voice of all things, has the conquer haki, he chooses the same path that Roger chooses on his journey, he chooses very similar teammates, he says the same things, he has the same mentality and dream for freedom, and even wears the straw hat with a passion that he himself may not understand. He also often knows the weather of the next island, as we saw when he predicted snow on Drum Island, which is only possible if you already know the Grand Line, which Roger and Joy Boy both do. It seems that Luffy has some kind of unknown connection to Roger and Joy Boy. This phenomenon has occurred several times, and so for every every person he has met from Roger's crew, with the exception of Buggy of course, has said that Luffy reminded them of Roger. This would make Luffy's fruit not the Gomu Gomu no Mi, but the inheritance fruit, namely the Kisho Kisho no Mi, which allows anyone who eats the fruit to inherit the will, power and knowledge of those who ate the fruit before him. This leads to only one conclusion: Joy Boy's secret. It seems that Joy Boy knew that the world is too weak to find out the secret of the Void Century, as it will only lead to more deaths due to the fact that the world government literally eliminated everyone with his knowledge. So he made the poneglyphs and hid a message on the last island. In this message he explained the great plan. He asked the person who would eat the devil fruit after him, and thus the only person who would ever be able to find the last island, to initiate the great pirate era so that the world will become strong enough to defeat the world government when the time comes to bring the dawn upon the world. The reason Roger and his crew never revealed the story of the Void Century is the same reason Joy Boy created the poneglyphs, namely because the world was not ready yet. Roger fulfilled Joy Boy's request and created the new pirate era. The worst generation was thus born, just as Joy Boy had planned. This is exactly why Big Mom asked in the last chapter why Roger created the new era, in the context of the One Piece. Before Roger died, he asked Shanks to find his devil fruit and give it to Ace, so that he would become the king of the pirates who would lead the war and bring the dawn upon the world, which Shanks intended to do if it weren't for Luffy's appetite for strange looking fruits. Before my partner continues this One Piece theory, please take a moment to leave a like. It really helps us a lot in creating more and better One Piece content for you. Thank you.
If all this is true, then the only way that Luffy's devil fruit could have inherited the Gomu Gomu no ability is if someone who had eaten the real Gomu Gomu no Mi also ate the Keishu Keishu no Mi afterwards. That is the inheritance fruit, thus giving the fruit the ability to have the rubber property. Of course, this would mean that the person would die shortly afterward, since we know that no one can eat two devil fruits unless they know the secret of Blackbeard. We know that celestial dragons let their slaves eat devil fruits just for fun, even two at a time so that they can watch them explode. So it is not unlikely that one of the slaves had to eat two fruits for this purpose, considering that the fruit was eaten by Roger at the start of his journey, but he did not show any rubber ability. It only makes sense that this ability became part of the devil fruit after Roger died, and thus after the devil fruit reappeared for the first time after many centuries. This leads to the point where the world government got a hold of the fruit and tried to erase the true name of this fruit from history by changing its properties, and thus the name, using the true essence of the fruit itself. And as already said, by feeding it, for example, to a slave with the Gomu Gomu no ability. The biggest indication that something happened to the fruit is the fact that Shanks stole it from the government ship, one of the worst places to hide such a world treasure. If they wanted to hide the fruit, they would have hidden it somewhere in Marijoa or some other place where no one could find it. But the fact that it was on a ship only proves that the fruit itself just recently reappeared and was therefore collected by the government. In any case, there must be a reason why Shanks was in possession of this devil fruit. It's just not logical to say that he didn't know the true essence, especially since he stole the fruit. He certainly would not risk his life and the lives of his people to start a war against the government for a mere rubber fruit whose true awakening he was unaware of. So after Shanks stole the fruit, he went far away from the Grand Line to the East Blue to fulfill his captain's request to give the fruit to Ace. But Luffy ate the fruit and thus inherited Roger's and Joy Boy's will. Shanks then not only sacrificed his arm for the next generation, but also gave him the straw hat, knowing full well that Luffy's fate was now inevitable, which is why Shanks has been waiting for Luffy's arrival ever since, as Luffy now became the person who will bring dawn upon the world. Luffy became the person Shanks has been waiting for to give the straw hat, the crew that Carcass has been waiting for to appear, the person Rayleigh has been looking for who will be worthy to wear the straw hat, the person from the prophecies, the return of Joy Boy. And this is where it all starts to come together. We know that there was a time called the Void Century. Except for Roger's pirates and some people in the world government, not not a single living soul on this planet has any idea what really happened during that time. However, an archaeologist from O'Hara, Professor Clover, had an idea. He told us that at that time there was a prosperous and powerful ancient kingdom that ruled over all the seas. However, they had a certain enemy. This enemy felt threatened by the existence of this ancient kingdom, so they invaded the kingdom and defeated it. The kingdom was destroyed, and somehow the enemy managed to erase every bit of information about it from history. Coincidentally, the end of the kingdom's reign also marked the end of the Void Century. At the time, two important things happened. An organization called the World Government was established for the first time. Clover had a theory that the world government was nothing but the enemy itself. And the other thing that happened was, a man named Joy Boy wrote down the history on poneglyphs. This person then later showed a mysterious connection to Roger and Luffy. Roger said that there are three things that cannot be stopped: a person's dream, the flow of time, and inherited will. Applying this code to our theory would mean that Joy Boy had a dream that he passed on to Roger and Luffy through the flow of time with the help of Luffy's devil fruit. Joy Boy probably planned to destroy the reverse mountain and thus the Fishman Island in order to unite all the seas together so that they could become one piece. For this reason, he began building the Noah Ark to keep the fishermen safe. Joy Boy managed to complete Noah, but could not fulfill his promise at that time because the world was not ready. So he apologized to Poseidon through the poneglyphs. Nevertheless, he promised that that day would come sometime in the future, the day when fishmen and mermaids would live under the sun. The promised day and Madame Shirley's prediction that Luffy will destroy Fishman Island are one and the same. This proves that Luffy has inherited Joy Boy's will to one day unite all four seas to make them one piece by creating the All Blue. In order for this to happen, the world must first hear the truth about the Void Century. But in Joy Boy's time, the world was not ready for this, so he created a route that could only be completed by a person who would be able to change the world as Joy Boy planned. A person that people look up to, listen to, and be inspired by his word. The King of the Seas. In this case, it was Goldie Roger. Joy Boy asked him to create the new pirate era so that when the next person after Roger finds this island, the world will be ready. Then the King of Pirates will be the one to lead all the new strong pirates so that together they can bring the dawn upon the world. And so that Joy Boy's dream will come true. This is the only reason why Roger never revealed the truth about the Void Century to the public, because that's Luffy's job. Joy Boy, the man with the dream who passed down his will through time and plotted to overthrow the world government. Roger, the King of the Seas, who granted Joy Boy's request to create the Age of Pirates, thus connecting Joy Boy's dream with Luffy's journey. And finally, Luffy, the future King of the Pirates, who will bring the dawn upon the world and thus make Joy Boy's dream come true. To put it briefly, Joy Boy created the plan, Roger prepared the plan, Luffy executes the plan. All three had one thing in common. They all ate the same devil fruit, which connected all three with a desire of freedom. The One Piece is Joy Boy's dream to unite all the seas into one piece, creating the freedom of the All Blue. So that's it for today, folks. Hope you guys enjoyed this theory. If you agree and loved it, don't forget to let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to smash the like button if you loved it. So if you're new to our channel, make sure you subscribe with the notification bell turned on. See you guys in the next video. Yummy out.